Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping straight into a totally fascinating conversation with journalist Josh Tyrangiel. It's honestly a massive reality check on artificial intelligence. If you're sitting there wondering how AI is actually going to impact your health, your kids' education, and just society in general, way beyond the usual hype and doom, well, you are exactly in the right place. Let's get right into what it truly takes to make AI work for us. To kick things off, we really need to look at this stark warning from Tyrangiel. Think about the last 20 years. We were all kind of hypnotized by social media, right? It just showed up on our phones, it was super easy, it was fun. But man, it brought along some serious societal harms that we're literally only just now figuring out. The absolute crucial takeaway here is that we cannot afford to repeat that mistake. AI is infinitely more powerful. So if we just sit back and passively consume it, letting it happen to us without grabbing the steering wheel, we are in for a seriously rough ride. We've got to speak up and demand what we want from it. Because right now, the whole public conversation is basically trapped between two completely wild extremes. On one side, you've got the Terminator doomerism, the whole idea that AI is going to break out, go rogue, and end civilization as we know it. And then, on the absolute flip side, you have these utopian promises that AI is just going to magically cure all diseases and solve every single human problem overnight. But look, here's the reality. Neither of those extremes is true. The actual story of AI is playing out somewhere in the messy middle. It's way more nuanced, heavily practical, and completely dependent on human effort. Take a look at what the handful of folks running the major AI labs are actually focusing on. They're intensely laser-focused on computing limits, massive energy requirements, trillion-dollar market caps, and, of course, delivering huge returns to their investors. But notice what's missing here? What they aren't necessarily prioritizing in their daily sprints is human nature. They aren't constantly asking how this volatile new tech is actually going to impact our republic or our local communities. And a major reason for that disconnect is that these massive labs are chasing something called AGI, or artificial general intelligence. In tech circles, they often call this the God machine. It's basically a highly autonomous system that can know everything and solve the most advanced problems totally on its own. Now, hitting AGI holds just unimaginable market value. But because the entire race is centered on raw computational power, it simply isn't built from the ground up to prioritize everyday human needs, or societal safety, or just the messy realities of how humans actually interact. And the stakes of that disconnect are incredibly high. Take this recent example. A major AI lab called Anthropic developed this advanced code tool known as Mythos. Well, once they started testing it, they realized something terrifying. It actually exposed massive cybersecurity vulnerabilities across pretty much every route you could imagine in the financial sector. They quickly realized the sheer danger of letting this out into the wild, so Anthropic actually voluntarily handed the tool over to the government and banks just to sound the alarm. That specific event acted as a huge wake-up call for government policy. It actually triggered a really rapid pivot from the Trump administration. Initially, the strategy was heavily leaning toward a fast, entirely unregulated approach just to stay ahead of international adversaries. But the Mythos test made it undeniably clear that advanced AI, if it falls into the wrong hands, could literally cripple financial systems and privacy controls. So that pivot toward vital oversight was swift and totally necessary. We're seeing this exact same high-stakes balancing act play out over at the Pentagon, too. Modern military operations already rely heavily on AI tools, think Palantir or Anthropic's Claude, to process massive amounts of information and keep a strategic edge. Yet AI lab leaders like Dario Amodei over at Anthropic are drawing some very strict lines. They specifically oppose the use of AI to make autonomous, unsupervised kill decisions. So right now, there are these quiet, urgent negotiations happening to find a balance between undeniable military necessity and profound human boundaries. So what does this all mean? How do we actually navigate these immense world-altering risks? Well, it comes down to a concept called the human in the loop. This is absolutely the fundamental safeguard. It basically means that an AI system is never ever just set loose to make final, unsupervised decisions. Instead, you always have a dedicated human being right there. They're monitoring the outputs, tweaking the parameters, and most importantly, holding the power to override the machine when necessary. It's the one thing that separates a highly dangerous tool from a life-saving one. Let's actually move to a real-world example to see how this plays out in practice. Let's look at how the prestigious Cleveland Clinic used this exact human-in-the-loop concept to battle sepsis. Now, sepsis is a completely deadly infection, and it's notoriously tricky because it looks like dozens of other minor ailments. If you catch it early, you hit it with antibiotics and save a life. But if you catch it too late, the mortality rate is just devastating. Now, if you just turn an AI loose in an intensive care unit to detect sepsis, it's a total disaster. The machine just flags every single tiny anomaly, creating this endless chorus of distracting beeps. And honestly, that is the absolute last thing an overworked ICU doctor needs. They just end up turning it off. But the Cleveland Clinic didn't do that. They kept the human in the loop. They had a dedicated doctor and an ICU nurse spend a year and a half manually tweaking the AI's algorithm. They adjusted its language and refined the alerts so it actually served the medical staff instead of annoying them. And the payoff for all that grueling work is just mind-blowing. By having real people constantly monitor and verify the AI's flags right there at the patient's bedside, they didn't just fix the alarm fatigue, they actually reduced sepsis mortality in the hospital by a massive 40%. 40%! That is thousands of lives saved, not just by throwing a machine at a problem, but by dedicated people brilliantly guiding that machine. Okay, let's switch gears and look at another super important field, education. Picture an Indiana high school teacher staring down a classroom of 10th and 11th graders. They're completely checked out, distracted by TikTok, and just totally disconnected from traditional learning. Well, this teacher decided to use an open AI-powered tool called Conmigo to completely and utterly reinvent her stoichiometry chemistry class. She realized pretty quickly that the whole 1885-style lecturing from the front of the room was just failing these modern students. So she completely threw out the old playbook. She dropped traditional lectures entirely. Instead, she turned every single lesson and quiz into a highly active hands-on lab. And here's the genius part. She used the AI tool to scaffold the students' interactive learning, basically letting the AI guide them through the complex steps of the chemistry material at their own individual pace. The transformation was absolutely astounding. Instead of a silent room full of disengaged kids just copying down notes, the whole classroom came alive. Students were constantly collaborating, actively moving around, and doing real experiments. The big takeaway here is that the AI didn't replace the teacher at all. It empowered her. It acted as this customized guide for the kids, which really proves that when you pair deep human care with AI tech, you get truly extraordinary results. And this exact same principle extends all the way to how we govern. Even in modern discussions about driving massive government efficiency, like with the proposed DOGE initiative, a really stark reality comes up. You simply cannot just let an AI algorithm run an entire agency or manage public services completely unsupervised. Government is inherently for people by people. AI, despite all its crazy processing power, fundamentally misses the nuances of human need and societal context. True governments just inherently require a human touch to steer the ship. So the inescapable truth across all of these areas, hospitals, schools, the military, the government, is that there are absolutely no silver bullets when it comes to AI. You can't just plug it into the wall and expect it to solve the world's problems. The technology itself is essentially useless and maybe even harmful without carrying highly skilled and incredibly diligent human beings putting in the hard work to implement it the right way. So where do we go from here? Well, first things first, we have to stop the defensive crouch. Curling up in a ball and fearing some sci-fi Terminator scenario isn't a strategy. We need to take action. Spend just 20 minutes a day playing around with these tools. Learn what large language models can actually do. Figure out exactly what you want the AI to do for you, and honestly, what you definitely don't want it to do. If we all become informed users, we can collectively create a massive market for the good stuff and demand much better, safer products from the tech developers. Because the reality is, this technology is moving at lightning speed. It's only getting faster, it's getting smarter, and it's becoming more integrated into every part of our lives. Which really leaves us with one final, absolutely vital question to ponder today. Will you take ownership of this incredibly powerful tool right now, jump into the deep end, and use it to fix the things that actually matter in your world? Or are you going to sit back, stay passive, and just wait for the future to happen to you? Ultimately, the choice and the human in the loop is you.